Sadly, I'm injured again. And what is the injury, you may ask? Well, currently on my toes, I have these big bumps. If this wants to, there you go. You can't really see, but this is sort of squishy but bony bump there, which is unfortunately for me on both toes right there as well. Now, these are called bunions, I think is the colloquial term for them. Not sure what the scientific term is, but this is my most recent injury. Now, like any sport, including climbing, injuries happen. They're bound to happen no matter who you are. Sometimes they're your fault for doing something dumb, like not warming up, and other times it's just circumstantial or just really unlucky. And because of my recent flurry of injuries, I've come up with a video idea of just going through my injuries to recap you what I've been through, and maybe you can let me know in the comments or just generally what you're been through as well. So like I said, currently I've got these big fat bumps on my toes. Now, they are not painful at all, but allegedly they are just very inflamed tissue and cartilage or just something like that. But I've got to not wear climbing shoes for a month. Just before that, I actually pulled my hamstring doing this climb. Come on, baby. Attempt one. Ooh. Oh. Now, originally I was going to make a video on this climb because it was one of the coolest but hardest climbs I was trying. And unfortunately, I must not have warmed up enough and ping went my hamstring. Now, unfortunately for me, I now have I'm not so sure how permanent hamstring injury. It's been a couple weeks now and I tested it out before and it still wasn't going well. What else, you may ask? Well, I've actually sublapsed my hip before. Maybe 6 odd months ago, I was doing this climb.
Everything's fine. Everything's good. Everything's fine and good and fine.
And exactly, the position that my body was in was not normal. The only way I can describe that injury, which has been the worst in my life so far, was my hip just exploded in this region. I'm not sure if you can see, in the region just here, it just completely exploded. I was pucked. That put me out for many months. Had to get wheelchaired in by my partner in the hospital. Couldn't walk, couldn't do anything that day. I was cooked. A couple months before that, I actually injured my ankle. Now, my ankles are cooked from sports previously, but this is one I caught on camera. I'll save you the 2 minutes after where I was rolling around on the ground, basically just contemplating the reason of life. Early on in my climbing journey, I don't have this on film. This is before, it was normal / people were filming their climbing. I dislocated my shoulder doing a dyno. That one wasn't that bad. I mean, I have terrible shoulders that have dislocated many times and I've had surgery on both. Another injury I got was whiplash from basically falling off the very top of a climb, going for a massive move. This is the climb I did it on. And as you can see, my neck just go whoosh. But the two sort of most recurring and sort of most elongated and in one sense the worst injuries I've had from climbing, one of them is tennis elbow. I think it's tennis elbows on the inside, golfer's elbows on the outside. It's where you have a tendon problem. There are so many reasons why. I'm not sure if it's just a thing in the climbing community or any sport, but you get hundreds of different advice. And a lot of the advice you get from climbers, physios, and all these sort of people with experience from it are just completely contradictory. Originally I rested my elbow for a couple of weeks and climbed again. That did nothing. I've had people tell me, oh, you just got to climb through the elbow pain. I tried all these different ways of taping the elbow, icing the elbow after climbing, massaging the elbow, anti-inflammatories, Nurofen, popping them left, right, and center so I could climb. I had a compression arm thing on my elbow. I warmed up vigorously. I made sure I was doing as much for the tendon strength and just general strength in the elbow joint, and nothing seemed to work. Now, this tennis elbow was hindering me for over a year. It was constantly there. I'd constantly tape it up, put the compression thing over it. Yeah, absolutely non-stop, constantly trying to work out the best way to treat it. Now, that one was a while ago, probably 2-3 years ago. My most recent one, which I've had on both fingers, and a lot of climbers, if not basically all of them, when they've been climbing for a couple of years, tendon or ligament problems in the finger. Now, for me, both my A2. For me, it was in both my middle fingers. This part right here, this part right here. Now, thankfully, at the climbing gym I'm at, I had a couple friends of mine who have been climbing for many, many decades teach me how to tape up my finger. But once again, I had loads of different advice. I advised to rest my finger. I advised to not climb through it, but to do a lot of hangboarding, light hangboarding at that, and then just keep climbing, but don't touch crimps. And then you slowly integrate crimps. Now, for my pulley injuries, which is what climbers call it, it wasn't severe, it was just extremely tender, and it was basically from just doing a particular climb over and over again. This happened in both fingers. Recently, my right one re-injured itself doing a really pinchy climb over and over again. So, you may be thinking, what is the premise of this video? I'm going to be going through all these injuries, talking about how to try and prevent it, and then how to sort of treat it in my experience. Now, I'm not a physio or a fucking safety expert by any means, but anecdotal evidence hopefully can be good for you. Spraining your ankle. Now, every time I've sprained my ankle, it's when I've fallen, when I wasn't expecting to fall, and I fall out of control. Things like spraining your ankle, like you saw in the video, things like dislocating your hip or sublapsing your hip, which you saw in the video, you can't control them. Look, the best thing I could say is when you're going for a sketchy move quite high up on the wall, you have to be 100% certain that you can make that move. Ways to get around this is feel the last hold, so use the safety holds and holds around that final hold that you're doing or whatever hold it is to get a feel of what the hold's like, so you don't go for it and it's a sloper, you slip off, you're fucked. And another thing I like to do is for people who have injured themselves from falling badly, in my case, I find myself extremely scared at the top of the wall. I can no longer just jump or hurl myself and do a really big move at the top. I have to be static as ever at the top of a wall. Now, if there is a move which is a bit sketchy, you know, a high foot, and I'm a bit worried about it, the first time you do the move, do it with, you know, a quarter of the strength and effort. Do it knowing that you're gonna miss, you know you're gonna miss, you're planning to miss, but you're ready for the fall. So effectively you do, you know, a 1/4 effort, a half effort, 3/4, and then after a couple times, a few times you've had a feel for what it's like to basically fall down on the mats. That should hold you in better stead to go for that move at 100% effort, and if you don't make it, you've fallen 3 times before that, hopefully that helps you fall better. But otherwise, unfortunately, climbing is a luck game. Injuries happen. That's just life, like just shit happens. If you love a sport and you're injured, it's the most frustrating thing. You'll do anything to get back on the wall. And for me, just when I get these injuries, you just have to be disciplined to rest, recover, ice, rehab, all that kind of stuff to get you back on the wall as quick as possible. Now, in terms of injuries, we'll go through the fingers. Now, the fingers are a very complex thing. All these, you know, tendons, ligaments, nerves, all that shit runs through your hands. And your fingers, your hands, all connected to the forearm. So a lot of injuries to climbers happen in this sort of region. Now for me, I was taught to basically tape it quite tight in doing sort of a circle manner. I would show you to tape it, but I don't have tape on me. Taping was only useful when my finger was tender and I was confident about climbing. You know, especially if I was doing a crimpy climb after I've, you know, injured a pulley, you really should use tape. Basically stops some of the blood going there and like numbs it kind of, and just sort of supports your finger in general. Now, things I did to help my finger: hot and cold treatment. Get a glass or a mug of cold water with ice in it, and get one with not boiling water, but pretty hot water. Dip your finger in there until it gets too cold. Dip your finger in the warm water until it gets too hot. Hot and cold treatment. Hot and cold treatment has been studied a load, and it has been shown to work for recovery for a multitude of different things. Massaging as well, I found for the finger, getting massage oil and basically just rubbing the finger in line with all the ligaments and shit in there. Helps to sort of get everything in line, something like that. Look, I'm not sure about the wording, but this is all what I've been told by physios and by just the general climbing community. The hardest thing for me, like I went through, said before, was the elbow, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow. The best advice I can say is just trial and error different things. If you go to a physio, they'll probably tell you to rest it. I found resting it did not help at all. I literally wouldn't climb for a couple months, come back my first climb, and it's straight there, the first climb. I found taping it didn't help, but placebo maybe. I found, you know, the compression thing didn't help. If I had to guess what got through me the tennis elbow, it was probably a mix of, you know, not climbing too much or too hard, but also just eventually, I think my joints and everything, ligaments, anything around my elbow just got used to it. It's a bizarre thing. All the icing I tried didn't work. Like, I genuinely tried so many different things for this fucking tennis elbow, and I can't really give you a conclusive or definitive answer to how it was healed. Which is really frustrating, because if it does come back for me, which it hasn't, thankfully yet, touch wood. Don't know if you can see that, but touch wood. I'm not sure how to get rid of it. Now, taping is your best friend for a lot of injuries, but generally you don't want to tape for too long because then that's just an over-reliance on the tape supporting the joint, the muscle, whatever you're trying to support. Look, at the end of the day, come to think of it, not every, but most of the injuries I've gotten were at the top of a wall. And it all has to do, the whiplash, the hip injury, all the ankle injuries I've had have all had to do with falling in an uncontrolled fashion from the top or the, higher up on the wall. I used to be the guy who would get to the last two moves, and it felt like I was on the floor. I had no issue with it, no fear at all. Boom, boom, whatever move it was, I would do it. But the reality is, at the end of the day, chances are throughout your climbing career, you will gain an injury or get an injury from falling badly from the top. And psychologically, you will be changed for it. So it's just about knowing your limitations, knowing you, doing everything you can to avoid that situation. At climbing gyms, they'll tell you how to fall properly. You're falling back. You don't fall on your fucking arms, you keep it in. That's a mistake I made with the hip. Despite working at a climbing gym, I should not have stuck my hip out. I should have just crunched up in a ball and taken the landing. You could argue with the ankle as well. I should have maybe landed in a better fashion. Look, there's loads of things you can do, but at the end of the day, the way you fall is all split decisions, sort of where your body goes. And look, I've had my fair share of injuries. Like I said, many dislocated shoulders, many fucked up, everything. But know your limitations, do everything you can to avoid being injured, but also embrace it. Be very disciplined in how you approach it. Different sort of video, just thought I'd share with you, purely because I can't produce climbing content for probably a month or so I'm fucked in that respect. But let me know if you enjoy it. Let me know your injuries down below. What did you do to get through your injuries? I'm sure anyone who's climbed for a decent time would have had an injury. How did you get through it? What did you do? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll be seeing you in another video.